It's Aneesa Getaneh. They was doubting by my calling, now they peeping away.
Hey guys, it's Aneesa Getaneh, and today on the Pretty and Profitable podcast, we're going to cover the principle prestigious/popular. And I want to introduce Nicole, who embodies this particular principle. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. So I've heard a lot of great things about you,
Thank you.
but I want you to introduce yourself to the people.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. And
Yes,
thank
thanks
you
coming.
for having these type of conversations. I just don't think we have these enough. So very
Right.
excited to be here. Just a little bit about me. I'm Dr. Nicole Garner-Scott. I am a wealth advisor. I have been in the financial space for quite some time, and I'm just very extremely passionate about individuals setting up for second half of life. So to tie into today's topic, I just really feel like when you bring that intentionality to your current life, that also carries on to just really what second half of life looks like for many of us. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
Thank you for coming, by the way. So I talk about being pretty on paper, which is basically people getting their credit together, their
Yes.
business credit, but then there's other stages to that, right? Like you said. So being pretty on paper is also making sure that your business is in order. So I really thought that you fit really well into this. But prior to you helping people in the financial space, I was told that you were heavily into the PR world, which is
Mhm.
all about being popular and
Mhm.
prestigious and dealing with these high profile people. So how
Mhm.
did you go from that environment into the financial space? And and basically how did the experience that you had in there, how did it help you with what you're doing right now?
So answering your first question, how did I make that transition? I
Mhm.
feel like I've been in the world of entrepreneurship and business ownership since I was young. So naturally, I was having a lot of those conversations with clients anyway. I had got to a space where I also, woman of many talents, I opened a co working space in Atlanta, Georgia. And really, in that space, I think it was just divine intervention, but it
Mm.
caused me to sit down with a lot of individuals and just have a lot of one-on-one time with people. And I started really seeing as people were building these large empires, there was so much infrastructure that was not in
Mhm.
place.
Mm.
And I was having to refer out a lot of people, before we could have these excellent marketing campaigns and, all the other bells and whistles. The fun part of owning a business, there
Mhm.
was so much infrastructure that wasn't in place to make these businesses truly sustainable. So
Yes.
I was like, you're investing all this money on the front end side of it, but the back end is not matching,
Mhm.
to really creating businesses so that they have sustainability, so they have longevity, so that
Yes.
they're really not, here today and gone tomorrow,
Mhm.
uh, just in that aspect. So that really, I really just started branching into a lot of those conversations and really delved deeper into feeling like I served a deeper purpose there. Um,
Mm.
and I feel like PR helped me to make topics interesting that probably aren't very interesting to people.
Yes. Mhm.
It taught me how to communicate in a very simplistic manner. I think
Mhm.
when it comes to a lot of financial conversations, a lot of individuals get turned off because it's just,
Yes.
talks going over their head, even if they are very complex as far as how they've done their own planning.
Mhm.
When they get to their next level, they're like, okay, still break that down for me.
Right.
Why does
Right.
that matter to me? Why does that play a role in my life? And they typically have family members who need to be brought up to speed and they want them to feel very comfortable with the conversation transpiring too. So I really feel like I honed in my skill of getting messages across in
Okay.
the PR space. And that's really what a lot of financial planning boils down to is taking very complex um, topics and being able to help it apply to that person in their life in a way that it is relevant and it makes sense to them.
Right. And I think that that's excellent. And to have someone that's relatable, that looks like us and able to speak our language also is also beneficial. The question that I have for you next, it was a totally different question, but now I think that because I know that women will be watching this,
Mhm.
what can a person, because the average income over across the US, the average is between 30,000, I think, and 60,000 or something like that.
Mhm.
What should that group of people do, or what is the first step in them like planning financially? What would you say or tell them to do? And then the second question that's attached to that is what at what income bracket should that person have already done it?
Mhm.
Right? Like,
Mhm.
because you have people that make money really fast, right? So,
Yeah. So
mhm,
I'm never going to say should have already done it, because depending upon childhood, you've
mhm,
had access to, your resources,
yeah,
some individuals are just gaining a lot of that resource structure now,
yeah,
right? Like they've made money forever, but
mhm,
their circles, the individuals around them had not been exposed, and therefore they had not been exposed. So
mm,
a lot of times people are like, Nicole, I'm so embarrassed I haven't done this yet. And I'm like, that's
mhm,
really most people,
mhm,
unless they have really great guidance.
mhm,
Um, Someone that was not predatory, that really sat down and put them into
oof,
some of those right tracks earlier on in
mhm,
life. But it's systematic as to why we're just getting access to a lot of this information.
absolutely.
So when you get it, that's when you take it and run, right? Whenever that part comes into your life. But if you're in the 30 to 60K bracket,
Mhm,
I feel like you actually have to plan even more, because there's not a
mhm,
lot of wiggle room for
right.
life to surprise you,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
so sometimes individuals can think, okay, well, I'm just breaking even. Being able to just take care of these small things. How much planning do I need? It's when you
mhm,
need even more planning, because if life
right,
decides to life or surprise you, then it can be more detrimental. There's no
right.
cushion really there to help with that. So first things first is having that emergency fund in place.
Yeah.
That's going to be very key. Life will life. It's
Mhm.
just give it enough time and it will do what it does.
It's gonna do what it's gonna do.
It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to,
Right.
and for some reason, Murphy's Law, whatever it is you want to call it, it happens at the worst times, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
if we already have things in place to know that that's going to transpire, it takes something from being detrimental to just an inconvenience, right?
Yes.
I was speaking to an individual the other day who, her mother really leans on her financially.
Mm,
Um, and I'm big on creating boundaries, right? I'm big on creating boundaries, but she's established that she does want to help her mother, which I think
yeah.
is beautiful, as long as you can do it
Mhm.
in a place of boundaries.
Right.
She created a specific dedicated fund just for her mother, so
Mhm.
that it does not annoy her when her mother asks. It doesn't send
Mm,
her into a place of trauma or trigger or
right.
whatnot, because now she has to move things around or make things
Right.
happen.
Right.
She's just already prepared for it. It helps keep them in a healthy place in their relationship. Also, it tracks, because when it's a loved one and they're asking for things, you have to say, okay, we have exhausted what was in the budget for this.
Right.
I'm sorry, I can't help past this point. Right. So
Mhm.
these are types of things that if you prepare for, it already happens. But yes, so having that emergency fund, leaning into your dollars, right?
Yeah.
So it could be very small. When you have a ton of money, you don't notice Apple taking, $2.
$9.
Yeah, you don't notice it. But let
Right.
it be a tight month and you're like, Apple, you have just tried me.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
So getting very clear on your dollars, using
Yeah.
technology, if it's the Rocket Money app, if it's mint.com, if it's you need a budget platform, any of those type of things, you
Mhm.
have to lean in. You cannot be the person that says, I don't do dollars. I don't do math. That's not my thing. I'm not the numbers person.
Ooh,
You have to be. Because
yes.
you don't have this financial team that's surrounding you. You're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for your own
Yeah.
elevation to the next level. So you have to lean into what's transpiring. And typically, a lot of us uh, have these money leaks that are transpiring or taking place that we're just not paying attention to.
Yeah.
Uber Eats is usually the highest
Oh
line
my
item on
goodness.
everyone's financial cash flow spreadsheet. Is Uber Eats, is Amazon Prime, it's
Yeah.
those different things, and it does not feel like you're spending a ton on that. It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't. Is Let me order a few lunches here and there. Let me order dinner.
Right.
At the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, you've realized you've spent $600 and $700 a month
Right.
on convenience, and
Mm-hmm.
your life might not match that level of convenience just yet. It will get
Right.
there.
Right.
These are chapters, these are moments in time, etc. But right
Right.
now, as you're getting to your next level, you have to be very keen on how that's happening. So I would definitely say, if you were in what most of America is going through right now, you have to lean into the dollars at the fullest level. You have to educate yourself as much as possible. If
Yeah.
you are getting into more of a six figure and above bracket, what typically tends to happen is you're pulling a lot of your information from the individuals around you that you feel
Mm-hmm.
like have achieved that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what becomes faulty is, at that level, you need to start having a customized plan to that, right? So let's
Right.
say you're making 125, and there's another individual that walks in my office at the same time making 125. What's different is you might be in the medical professional, you have 600K in student loans. This other
Mm-hmm.
person has no debt. What might be different for you is you were gifted inheritance. There was money that came down to you, property that came down to you. This other person might have to do everything from scratch. So what happens
Right.
is both of you are saying, "Oh, okay, I got this certain tool. I knew to get this IRA, or I set this up, or I did this," and you're following each other, but all the factors of your life and what's contributing to the variables are completely different. And so that's
Yes.
what becomes complex in that type of way. Even with what you do, when you talk about pretty on paper, there's
Mm-hmm.
individuals who have become very beautiful on paper, and there's other
Mm-hmm.
individuals that have a lot of surgery that needs to happen, right? And so I couldn't think of anything else, so we went straight for surgery. That might be the
Yes.
answer.
Little
Um,
cosmetic, little tuck, nip tuck.
Wait, no, that's what needs to happen. But in regards,
Right.
right? So it's all those secrets, the back end stuff, the stuff that no one is talking about out loud,
Yeah, it's
that
true.
actually plays a really large role in that financial structure. And
Mm-hmm.
then also too, what are the dynamics going on in the household, right?
Right.
Is there a spouse? Is that spouse overspending? So
Right.
anytime you're putting some of these tools in place, like you're getting investments, that person's taking all the money back out of the investments, which is not which means this vehicle doesn't make sense to you guys because everyone's
Right.
not committed to seeing these vehicles through. So
Right.
there's just a lot that's happening once you get into your higher brackets. Also too, what I find with just a lot of my clients,
Uh-oh.
sometimes they're the highest earners in their circle. They're the highest earners in their family. So there's really no one that they can talk to that they can compare this to. Like who else have they gone through? Who else around them has gone through some of their similarities, right? That your
Mm-hmm.
problems just become different. Instead of trying to figure out how to save for this next thing, it becomes you're dealing with extreme amount of taxation, and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how to have a strategy to mitigate the taxes, or you're starting to figure out your lifestyle costs are going to be so much more than certain other individuals. How are you sustaining that type of lifestyle in retirement? It's just because
Right.
everyone has problems, right? the
Right.
problems will affect, but the problems start to look different. So who you
Mhm.
start to surround yourself with becomes very key as far as like your financial team.
I like that the underlining answers to a lot of the women when I talk about being profitable or any of that, everyone says the same thing, which is it's customized. And so I wish that we could really get back to understanding that everybody has their own lane. And the
Mhm.
very first thing before you do anything is to identify who you are,
Yes.
what you have, and where you're trying to go. And not
Mhm.
looking over, like you said, at your friend. You guys make the same amount of money, but they might be a trust fund kid and they might be
Mhm.
getting extra money that they don't even realize they're getting. And they're telling you, oh, yeah, I pay my bills and I this, but grandpa's paying my mortgage,
Yes.
or whatever. Right. And
Mhm.
so I think that that was so, I'm so glad that you said that because um, I think because we have this access or this false access to people and
Mhm.
their portion of their lifestyle or a lack thereof, we think that, oh, this person is making that and they're able to buy this car. So when I do that, I'm able to buy this car. But that may not be the case. Or I've made six figures and let me go buy this G Wagon so I can get a tax write out. But you don't really need to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because that situation and your situation and their situation is completely different. So I'm glad that you said that.
Do you remember on it was like a meme that was going around about HGTV, and so it would be like on HGTV when they did the makeovers, and it would be like this teacher makes 15,000 a year, husband's not working, but they're getting ready to get a $1.7 million makeover to their
Exactly.
home.
She makes something, makes jewelry, paper jewelry or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But the part that was missing from the conversation is that this house was a part of their inheritance. You know, they had proper insurances and they were the beneficiaries of that put this certain amount into place. So their net worth was already at this certain amount. It is so much left out of the conversation. So you're saying that and you're
Yes.
like, oh, okay, well, I know I make what they make. So let me start redecorating my house at that level. But that's
Mm-mm.
because the entire conversation wasn't exposed in regards to what we were really looking at when that was happening.
It's like,
Mhm.
no, baby girl, you probably need to go buy a cash flowing asset before you go do
Mhm.
anything else.
Correct.
Right. And
Correct.
I talk
Yes.
about that. I've been really introducing this idea on the podcast about investing in boring businesses, getting into something that's cash flowing, something that
Mhm.
is already making money. And I think that's
Mhm.
just like a hard concept for people to think about because we always think about entrepreneurship as starting from the bottom, getting
Yeah.
everything together. But there are businesses, especially right now as millennials, we can jump into extremely profitable businesses because we have it's a time that's never going to come for us again in regards to baby
Mhm.
boomers retiring, right?
Right.
And this transition in technology that a lot of them are not willing to change and convert their businesses over into. And then a lot of
Mhm.
them don't have kids or their kids are not interested in their business, whatever it
Correct.
is. But yes, we have the goal of making a lot of money, but maybe our way to going about doing that is really leaning more into something that is creating a cat that's already cash flowing that may not be too sexy. It may
Yeah.
not be sexy to go, you know, buy a business that people don't post on Instagram, right?
Mhm.
But if the numbers make sense, like I live in LA,
Mhm.
you can't get a house. I've been looking at boring businesses. I'm in the process of seeking some out and getting some boring businesses. And one
Mhm.
of them is 250,000.
Mhm.
Now, do I buy the boring business, 250,000 that cash flows 6,000 a month?
Mhm.
Or do
Mhm.
we try to run and go get, and it's just not a good time to try to buy something in California with the
Mhm.
tenants rights and all. It's just not. It's just not.
Yeah.
But really focusing on when is it a good time to put your money into something that will create more money and
Yeah.
and create that wealth that we don't have to work more for. We're just working a little bit smarter. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you said that. And I know I just added a little extra with a little cherry
No,
on
that's
top,
good.
but
Mhm.
I think that us again, and I said this before on one of the episodes, we have to understand that we've only had ownership for 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
no more than that. So
Mm-hmm.
this posture that we're in old money and things like that is just for a lot of African Americans, it's just not true. We can go into the history book and see that that's not true,
Right.
right? And so we have to be open to really, first of all, the market and really taking advantage of these times for us to build something faster,
Yeah.
and not faster as in speed, but more as in compounding your money in a
Mm-hmm.
time where it won't happen again. This transition
Yeah.
of wealth, this changing of wealth that's happening right now. And so becoming knowledgeable is so important. And having women like you, where you're the face, right, of financial planning, and you're able to tell people, hey, yes, I understand you have this, but this is what you should be doing. I think is so important.
I
So
love that.
important.
I also too, I feel like a big part of what we do is really helping to mitigate risk, right? And so what you're talking about
Mm,
for businesses, you're bringing the risk factor down. So
mm-hmm.
I definitely
Mm-hmm.
feel like when you have all of your foundation pieces in place, when you have your emergency fund, when you have
Yes.
put all the things that's needed from retirement vehicles to your, like we call it, your defense strategy, when that's in place and you're ready to
Mm-hmm.
go into the investment side, truly understanding what is the level of risk that you can take on. So the reason that boring businesses work for a lot of people is because that is the amount of risk that most individuals can take, right?
Yes.
You brought down the level of risk factor because it has proven concept. It
Mm-hmm.
has current cash flow that usually you can just
Yes.
infiltrate right
Jump
into.
in.
Whereas a
Mm-hmm.
startup, it may not work. It might
Right.
take well, it will take more than whatever you forecast, whatever you project. Most
It's gonna
startups
take
take
more.
longer than what you feel like will to get it going,
Absolutely.
and cost more than what you ever estimated it will cost. And
Mm-hmm.
so that level of uncertainty heightens the level of risk. And so as you're getting, as you start to grow more in your journey of finances, you're looking at, how do I hedge against those risks? How do I mitigate
Mm-hmm.
risk as much as possible to retain a lot of your wealth? Now, there
Yes.
are people who are just going to be risky, right? That matches it.
Yes.
But that's because they might have enough things in place that they can
Mm-hmm.
take on that risk and it won't
Yes.
completely
Deplete
obliterate
their
what they have going on, right?
yeah.
Whereas other individuals, they jump out into the riskiest thing. There was no infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
to be able to sustain that. And then they completely go backwards. They lose their house, they lose
Yeah.
land, they're unable to pay taxes. Then
Mm-hmm.
they get in trouble with the IRS. It's just, you don't want to put yourself in a place where you're going backwards,
Right.
because you misdiagnose the level of risk of what you're getting into.
Right. You just made me think about one of the things that I talk about in the book. And I talk about like just being employed and not planning for the future or not investing is like riding a bike. Right.
Mm,
And a lot
mhm.
of people think like they, with working that they're going to get to wealth. It's, you riding a bike, you gonna get there, but it's gonna take you a long time, right? Riding a bike.
Mhm.
But when you
Mhm.
have vehicles, like you said, I talk about four different types of vehicles, and not four different types of vehicles, but wheels, right? On a
Mhm.
vehicle. When you drive in a vehicle, you can get there faster, right? You're gonna
Mhm.
get there faster compared to riding a bike. And so building wealth is like having your vehicles, having your different financial vehicles that will get you to wealth faster. And being employed, it was never meant for you to build wealth. It was just for you to sustain, not even thrive. It was just for you to be able, you riding your bike, right? You have
Mhm.
two wheels, and by the time you get to wealth, you tired,
Mhm.
by the time you get to the destination. So getting people to understand that the investment conversation, the financial planning conversation, and the projecting for the future is not something we're trying to bore people with. It's really for
Right.
you to understand how to incorporate that. It doesn't have to be all these things, but start with one thing and start to
Mhm.
incorporate financial things into your life so that
Yeah.
when you are 60, you don't have to go, well, I got to go to Walmart, because I
Mhm.
got to, like
Mhm.
planning your life now and not even 60, like break and unsubscribe to what they say about retirement. You can choose your retirement based on the type of investments that you make or, what you can
Yeah.
handle. We talk about risk, but investing now for later is the very thing that we need to be talking about.
Mhm.
As a millennial, Social Security is just not a conversation we're having
Mhm.
because it's
Mhm.
going to be non existent, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we have to be super creative. And I think, again, this is now the time to be able to get extremely knowledgeable. This is not about trying to do something and post it on Instagram. This is really about focusing on what vehicles can I add to my portfolio or to my
Mhm.
life that would allow me to get there faster. And
Yeah.
so, with that, I have another question.
Sure.
How do you develop an investor mindset?
Um, to have an investor mindset, I feel like you have to remove the emotion from it,
Mm,
right? And so, a lot of us are driven. Money is so personal to many of us,
mhm,
and we have the wrong perception of what money is. Money is a tool.
mhm, mhm.
And if you separate the emotion from it and understand it as a tool, that tool can be utilized in a multitude of ways. So, understanding from an investment mindset, you want to really understand how this tool is working for you, that
Right.
this tool will have up moments, it will have down moments. The
Mhm,
economy is something that you cannot control. No one holds a crystal ball on
mhm.
on how the economy will go. I don't think any of us forever saw the pandemic coming our way, right?
We didn't.
But it has completely changed a lot of business models and business structures, inside out, at this point, and we will feel the wrath of what happened economically for years on end. I still feel like we're
Yes.
only seeing the tip of the iceberg
The
of
tip of
how
the iceberg.
that,
Yes,
has
absolutely.
played a role in that.
Mhm.
So just even being able to see some of that, but from an investor mindset, you have to understand there'll be tops and bottoms, there'll be peaks, there'll be lows. Also, too, you have to understand that sometimes it may not be your skill set. And that's where you start to bring in individuals that is their skill set. There
Mhm.
was, a lot of people who did very well when the economy was up on the investment
Mhm.
side, that didn't necessarily understand the structure of investing. But when the economy is good, everything does well, right? So you're
You
you're
floating.
you're
It's a
practicing day
wave.
you're hopping into real estate left and right,
Right.
without doing your due diligence. You're doing
Mhm.
these different things, and while the market is up, it's like, oh, I can start teaching classes and courses, and I
Mhm.
can, etc. And recently, it was like, oh, this is where you have to really understand what's really transpiring in the market, right?
Right.
This is where
Absolutely.
there has to be a deeper level of knowledge, or your resources or your financial team that surrounds you is helping you pivot, make sustainable decisions during this time, etc.
Mhm.
So that becomes a big part of it too, just relinquishing, hey, I don't have to do this all myself. What I don't know, and I trust the professionals for that afterwards. Also too, when it comes to investing, you have to know what makes sense to what your goals are, right? So
Mhm.
there's some investments that you're in and you're out. It's quick and you want to see a return on that and you're out.
Right.
There's other investments where it takes the power of time, right? So
Mhm.
many people who are watching this podcast now, you might not think you're an investor, but you have a 401k, so you're an
Mhm.
investor. You have
Mhm.
an IRA in some capacity, so you are an investor. You're a homeowner, so you are an investor. A
Mhm.
lot of individuals are investors that don't necessarily see themselves as such, but some of
Mhm.
those vehicles that you're in, it takes it takes years for you to really see, what's going to transpire. So understanding that time plays a big role in some of the investment tools that you're seeking.
Yeah.
um, and then also understanding how taxes impact those different
Hmm.
investments, right? So this might be a quick investment, you get your money back quick, etc. What is your tax liability associated?
Hmm. Yeah.
um, and would you be better in another type of investment tool that has a different tax component to it? So
Right.
that's where you really have to understand a lot of the different layers to the decisions that you're making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that you said at the beginning was for people to understand that money is a tool and not to
Mhm,
take it personal. And I
mhm.
think that one is challenging for people. And I'll tell you why. Because most people trade their time for money.
Right.
So they're paying with their life. They're paying,
Mhm,
like it's personal because
mhm,
I did 40 hours for this money,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
But once you understand, and I've said this before, that you either pay with your time or your money. But if you're ignorant, you pay with both,
mhm,
right? And so a
mhm,
lot of people are operating in ignorance, and that's why they're not able to like move from just being a consumer into an investor. And then
mhm.
also they're not willing to part with their money because they've paid with their
So
time,
much for
you
that.
know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that you can't really do it and understand until you do it.
Mhm,
It's a lot like being a wife. You don't
mhm,
really know what it is until you do it. You can go
mhm,
to counseling, you can imagine
mhm,
the wedding, and you
mhm,
don't really know what it is to be pregnant until you have morning sickness, until you
mhm,
go through the whole. So it's
mhm.
the same thing. Like you can't continue to think about what it's like to do it and know the answer. You
Right.
actually have to do it, and then the answers will like emerge from there.
Mhm,
You will be able to see, and again, like you said, what works for you may not work for me. And so really understanding what you're getting into and why, and the risk involved is so important in regards to investing. So I
mhm.
like I like what you said.
Thank you.
um so what is okay, so we can't get to the trust. Okay, really quickly,
Mhm.
real quick, because I think people need to know about this. It's a conversation that we're starting to have more.
Yeah.
But what is a trust?
So a trust is basically the governing body that holds the set of directives
Hmm.
for what it is that you want to happen to your assets. So basically, the trust can hold the responsibility of the assets that you are acquiring through your life, right? And
Hmm.
then it can also give the directive of what you want to transpire. So
Hmm.
let's say, for instance, you want your children to be able to inherit your real estate portfolio,
Hmm.
but you want to make sure that they have graduated from college, or you want them
Hmm.
to be 30 before they
Hmm.
can inherit those different things. There's no other vehicle that will honor that for you outside of a trust.
Hmm.
So the trust will be able to make sure that is in place. Also, when we're thinking of how we're passing on generational wealth, the
Hmm.
trust will be the beneficiary of a lot of the different assets that you're accumulating. So
Hmm.
that's how we're making sure that your real estate portfolio, your businesses, your investments, they don't end up in
Hmm.
state probate, because the
Hmm.
the trust becomes the owner of those pieces. So that is the
Hmm.
vehicle that's being able to put that in place. A will becomes important because that will gives your basically what you want to transpire in those different types of ways. So that's the
Hmm.
document that becomes important as part of your estate planning as well. I'm very big on making sure that you're talking to an estate planning attorney,
Hmm.
or, through your advisor, you're having some of those initial conversations, and you're seeing how complex, your assets may be, how
Hmm.
that can be done. This, once again, that's another area that one size does not fit all, right? So
Right. It doesn't.
individuals need a revocable trust, some need irrevocable. It's
Mhm.
very dependent upon what's transpiring in regards to how those decisions get made.
Right.
You might have, property in multiple states. That
Mhm.
becomes very complex on how you're
Mhm.
dealing with that should anything happen. You might have a lot of assets that once they go to the next generation, it will endure a lot of taxation. There
Mhm.
needs to be, very well thought out how you're going to mitigate tax and that wealth transfer.
Mhm. Mhm.
So being able to sit down with an estate planning attorney, having your financial team come together is very key. Most individuals, I would think, that's listening to this podcast, some level of that needs to be in place, right?
Yes.
There's different levels, and I'm not saying everyone has to jump out with the $20,000 attorney to
Mhm.
organize that. There's attorneys that'll match each level, but
Mhm.
what you should do is if you know where you're going, you have in your mind, I'm going to get to this level. You should have already interviewed those individuals. You should already know these individuals that you're going to put into place when the timing is right for that.
Mhm.
When you
Right.
know that you've amassed a very complex level of assets, you know that there's certain things you want to transpire. You have land, you have real estate, you have business complexities. You're thinking of how are you transferring this business to the next generation if there's interest there. All those different things
Yeah.
you have already needed to interview these individuals and vet them so that when the time comes for that, it's in place.
Oh, so much to talk about. And we definitely have to go. But I'll just say this for people that didn't understand what she says, because there's so much. I talk about trust in my book as well, but I
Mhm.
talk about God being the original originator of a trust and
Mm,
how he has passed down instruction for us and given us guidelines of how we should handle our business, which is our principles. And the
mhm.
will is more like the scriptures telling us exactly how to carry those out. So I
I
definitely
like
in the
that.
book try to, yes, God is the
Mhm,
original trust designer, right? He is the
mhm,
grantor. And
mhm.
so if you don't understand that, I break it down in the book where you can
Nice.
simply understand it through biblical principles that God is the originator of
Mhm,
wealth principles. And
mhm.
so Nicole, thank you so much for coming. We have a segment, pretty on paper, where I ask each woman a beauty secret that they want to share with their audience. So, one of your beauty secrets that you would like to share with the audience.
Rest. Rest is biggest. If you do not get sleep, there is no
Yes,
beauty secret that can take the place of that.
that can help it.
It can't. It's
Yeah.
it's basically the the biggest foundation to everything. When I'm extremely tired,
Hmm.
now makeup can help you a little
A
bit,
little
right?
bit.
Like, you put
Right.
some concealer on and you can,
Hmm.
you know, beat face, etc. But your eyes look tired, your energy is tired, everything else, and so
You
it's
just
still,
tired.
it's the energy isn't beautiful. The energy
Yes.
isn't pretty.
Yes.
And that still impacts. And you could be very well rested and do nothing, and the energy can still be beautiful. The energy could be.
Yes.
So I would definitely say rest. I do not
Rest.
play about my rest. It appears I'm a very busy individual, but I rest just as hard. And
Good.
rest is one of your strongest wealth building tactics that you can.
Mm.
So, um,
How many
'cause
hours do you sleep?
so I'm a 7 hour average
Okay.
individual.
Okay.
For that, that's minimum. So we're gonna definitely do that. I believe in naps too.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm a napper.
Okay.
It Yeah, it helps me so I don't have to take all the different things to make up for that.
Yes.
So yes, so I would definitely say rest, and then after that would be supplements. But yeah, those are my beauty things.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Nicole, thank you so much for coming. Can you tell the people how they can find you and how to keep keep track of everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
And when women can get together and talk about money, we can go for hours.
Keep
So
going.
thank
Yes.
you team, for keeping us on track, because we probably would be in
Yes,
a whole another hour.
exactly.
Be like, when does this podcast end? This is
Right.
4-hour podcast.
Right.
But yes, to get in contact with me, once again, Dr. Nicole Garner-Scott. On Instagram is Dr. Dr. Garner-Scott. Website is The Money Plan Inc. So themoneyplaninc.com. As far as like true financial advice, I do a lot of that on LinkedIn. So if you want
Okay.
like strategy on the market, those different things, I do a lot of that on LinkedIn. So connect with me there too.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you again for coming. This was absolutely amazing and extremely informative. So we're going to have to do it
Thank you.
again.
Thank you, and congrats on your book and everything that you have
Yes.
on.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. So today we talked about the principle of being prestigious and popular. And Nicole embodied that. She took her experience from being a woman dealing with popular people, prestigious people, and those skill sets, and she's now driving it into the financial planning world. It is so important, like she said, to have a trust and protect your assets, but also to become a wealth building woman. And the very first way to do that is to work on your mindset. Working on your mindset is the first way to become a wealth building woman. So if you guys like this episode, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you on the next one.
It's Aneesa Getaneh. They was doubting by my calling, now they peeping away.